All right, welcome back to my block. We're here with Matt Kuscher.
Hey, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. Kush Hospitality Group. Really appreciate you making time for us.
Of
Just want to talk
course.
a little bit about kind of like your evolution, your origin story of Miami, your ode to Miami. Everything that you do is so well thought out and curated, and I just kind of want to get to know you a little bit better, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. So I was raised in Washington, D.C., so I came here at 1997 to go to FIU. So because of that, I feel like I look at Miami through a different lens. Because I didn't grow up here, I appreciate a lot of the little nuances and intricacies that maybe you overlook when you grow up here and see it your whole life, whether it be a rooster or a botanica or anything that's just kind of random that I didn't grow up with. So I really appreciate and see it. And so I was trying to emphasize those things when I see Miami.
It's funny, when I lived outside of Miami during my college years or when I went to New York City, I appreciated it so much more when I came back to visit. And I think you're absolutely right. We overlooked so much here. But how does a guy from DC end up in Miami? And you obviously speak some Spanish. I could hear it in
Sure,
your
yeah.
accent. So
That's a long story, but the reality is I flunked out of college, and my dad knew somebody at FIU at that time. This is 1997, and I always wanted to go into restaurants, and so they got me into FIU, and that's what really brought me to Miami, and that kind of changed my life. At that time, I was a knucklehead. I was getting into a lot of trouble, and taking courses and classes that were like towards something that was inspiring or something I wanted to do changed the way I looked at life.
and what drew you to hospitality or into food,
Sure.
like into restaurants?
Yeah, I'm a third generation food guy. So my grandfather owned bars in Brooklyn and owned donut shops in Fort Lauderdale and had a deli in Plantation. So I grew up in the 80s going to, Fort Lauderdale Plantation, going to a deli. And then my dad had a cafeteria and a Dunkin' Donuts. So I grew up in a Dunkin' Donuts. Back then, that's where you actually made the donuts in the place. So it was more of a diner than what you know of it today. So I always knew I wanted to go into restaurants or into food.
Okay, and then I did a little bit of research. So from college, you end up getting into the corporate part of hospitality. So kind of talk me through how that kind of shaped you and positioned you into the spot you're in right now.
Sure. So, I worked at Houston's restaurant for 11 years, and I worked in Manhattan and the city in 27th and Park. And then I also worked here in Coral Gables, and I ran that store for about 5 years. So, yeah, it's a great training program. I can only say that I learned a lot of how you want to operation properly, and it was a great training for me. I also met a lot of great people here in Miami working there, and a lot of them came with me when I opened my first restaurant, which was huge.
When you were in there, was there something that you saw that said, I can do this better? Because I feel like when you're spending over 10 years in the corporate world, you kind of get stuck in that. But was there always a driving force that told you, I'm going to go into business on my own, I'm going to do this on my own?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to open my own restaurant. It's just knowing you want to open a restaurant and doing it is two different things. I can talk all day, but raising money when you don't have money is extremely difficult. And I mentor people all the time on how to do this. But yeah, I wanted to open a restaurant, but wanting to and getting money is not the same thing. And it took me a long time to get to the point where actually people would invest money in me.
What is the one thing from corporate that you learned that you still emphasize today?
Yeah, so what I learned about that company and corporate and scenario was how to treat people and how to run an operation. So I learned exactly how to run an operation the best way possible working there, but I also learned not to treat people and to treat them like humans and to treat them like family and to treat them in a way that you can inspire and motivate them and not like a number.
Right. So before Local, did you know it was going to be burgers and beers before Kush Hospitality Group? Like, you could have picked anything,
Sure.
but you chose this one thing. I'm curious if there was something that maybe was like second on the list that you didn't.
No, I was always this. I'm not a trained chef. I've always worked in restaurants and kitchens my whole life, but I always wanted to make sure I did something that I knew how to do very well. And that was something that I always knew how to do very well from working in my many years in different restaurants, not just there, but I worked at Outback Steakhouse and many other restaurants through my years. So I knew I could do that. What happened was when I was trying to open a burger place, at that time, burgers were kind of blowing up in Miami. This was like 8 ounce and burger and beer joint in South Beach. This is, now I'm dating myself, but this is, 18, 20 years ago, they started blowing up. And at that time, I started kind of becoming very aware of organic, of farm to table, of composting and that process. And I realized that in Miami, that hadn't really been a thing yet. And so I did want to open a burger joint. And then that kind of evolved into more of a farm to table concept as I was trying to raise the money, and the concept changed during that time.
I remember all the names you just mentioned right now, but when I look back in the prism of my mind, I always thought that Kush and Locale was the jump off to that burger thing. I always equate, like, I felt like after Locale and Kush, then it came. I know that you guys all started at the same time. I thought everyone just followed because you're
Yeah.
the one that stuck around.
Well, those guys were more. That's when South Beach was kind of the only game in town, or for most restaurants. And obviously, I came off the mainland, into the mainland, and I think that changed the perspective a little bit. I would like to think that back then, a lot of people were scared to leave the beach because a lot of the action was there, and not because of me, but during that time period, people started doing those things, and quality restaurants started opening up on the mainland.
That kind of gets me into the Grove, right? So South Beach is really popular at the time. The Grove in 2011, kind of sleepy.
Yeah.
We had the noise ordinance that got enforced. None of the high-end restaurants were making their way here. So, and the real estate was not where it's at now. So there must have been a ton of risks that you were taking. But I'm curious to see, like, what made you land in the Grove, and what was it like for you? Like, what were your worries? Where was your fear about opening up?
So yeah, 2011, Coconut Grove was definitely on a down time, and what I was looking for was a new neighborhood and a community. And Coconut Grove was a neighborhood and a community. I was very dog friendly. I knew it was farm to table concept, people that care about what they put in their bodies. And Coconut Grove always had that kind of hippie or little bohemian vibe to it, that people do care about those things. So that's what I was looking for. But it was scary because the only thing that was open at that time that I can really remember now was, Green Street has obviously always been there. And at that time it was like George's and, a couple other random places, but there was nothing on this block. So I'll tell you a funny story. I had a regular from when I worked in corporate, and I ran into him across the street, and I told him, hey, I'm opening a restaurant in the corner, pointing to Locale. And, the first thing he said to me was like, why are you opening so close to to a bad neighborhood? And I'd already quit my job. I'd already invested everything that I owned in doing this. And, it scared me, scared and motivated me. But that was the perception at that time. When I left at nights, especially on Mondays and Sundays and Mondays, the Grove was dead. I would walk to my car with a gun in my hands, with the foot trigger, because I was the only person on the street walking when I would close at nights. So it was a different neighborhood, and it was definitely a little scarier then. Obviously now it's a completely different neighborhood. And the Grove has gone through this. It's been times where it was really nice. It's been times where it was really bad. At that time period, it wasn't great. That was when Halloween's, there would still be people going on Halloween going crazy, and then there'd be shootings sometimes.
Crazy.
Yeah, I remember I would ride my bike. I lived in the West Grove, and I would ride my bike to and from work. And one of my chefs told me one day, be careful, Matt, they're watching you. He knew that they told him, like they heard people talking about this guy riding a bike maybe in a neighborhood that didn't look like he belonged as much. And I distinctly remember that because I started riding my bike a little bit more cautious. But yeah, the neighborhood was very different. And, we are here where we are today.
What has been the secret sauce? What has been the one thing that you've put into each one of your places that kind of like always seems to work out?
Well, what always seems to work out is being scared to lose it. So when you go to work and you're scared of it not working, it pushes you to drive and make sure that you hit every single detail. And that's kind of where I'm at. And so from that, I try to make sure I hit every detail, whether that's the urinal in the bathrooms, whether that's the coaster, whether that's the music that I hand select for every song, obviously the ingredients you use for the food, whether it's a dog, the kids, whatever it is, I try to hit every single detail. So if you don't like the food, hopefully you have a dog that loves our dog biscuits or our dog menu. If you don't have a dog, then hopefully you have kids that love our kids menu that we do special, or the toys that we bring for kids. If it's not that, it's because I hand select every song. So there's songs you're not going to hear anywhere else in any other restaurant. And I can go on and on and on and on about that. I look at myself as a translator of this language that we call Miami. It's not Spanish, it's not English. Miami has its own language, and I try to translate that language to people through the restaurants, and that's through arts, music, decor, and everything else that's involved in a restaurant.
So I have it written here, the art of Kush, because I really do think that every single one of your spaces is curated. They're museums more than they're restaurants. So like when you go into one space, like what is the process in curating that space? Like, do you have a team that you sit there? Do you jot down your ideas throughout the years, and then eventually you open up an old book and create it, or?
All the above. I definitely leave it open for my team to give me ideas. And if they have a great idea, we use it. And I'm not scared of doing that. I do have plenty of books of ideas of things that if I want to open a barbecue place or a seafood restaurant or whatever it is, I have those concepts ready to go. But really what I do is I try to find the underbelly of the neighborhood. So for example, in Wynwood, when we first opened, I said to myself, we're basically in Overtown. I was on the edge of Overtown, Wynwood. What is known in Overtown and Wynwood. And this is at a time that it was, Wynwood was still not the same Wynwood. Um, and what we just came up with and what I found was I did start doing research, and it was Purvis Young. Purvis Young is a world famous artist who's in all the most famous museums in the world, and he's from Overtown. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, why is nobody really showing? I mean, obviously there's some things about him, but it's not really in your face. So I made the focus point of that restaurant to be Purvis Young, and that was the main art piece I had. So for people who knew, I could pay that homage to them. And even right now, I'll give you an example. We're doing Kush in Wynwood, and I am curating the building as we speak. Well, I'm trying to tell the story of the history of that building, and that building has so much history, from Whitey Bulger living there, from the guy Murray Dubbin who owned it, helping write the Florida Constitution, to help creating FIU, to the drug dealers, to the brothel, to everything that went there. Well, today I went out of my way to meet the nephew of the owner of the place that had it 25 years ago, to hear his perspective on the stories that happened in that building, so that when I tell the story, I can incorporate them into Kush. I'm also meeting with the family of Murray Dubbin, who was the grandfather, I guess great-grandfather, who opened that building, to get stories from their perspective, because I want to make sure I incorporate all those things in each piece. Everything in this restaurant, in all my restaurants, has a story. Whether it's a good story or a bad story, or you care or don't care, every single piece has a story. And it could be from where I got this table, which I got these tables from Oak Tavern when it was in Midtown and our design district. And now the owner of Oak Tavern is my partner in Brickell. And that was before I even knew him. And I got these tables from him. And, there can be over and over and over stories. I can't think of one thing that I thought was going to hit, but I can just tell you, like, the detail that I go to. When we were in Hialeah, I used an image of, in Hialeah, in that neighborhood, it wasn't like go to the supermarket. There's like little people on the streets in front of the house selling fruit and selling stuff that you buy from. So I incorporated a picture of our local grocery girl who sells the fruits a block away, and she was the image on the double doors when you walked in. But I went a step further. So not only am I incorporating this neighborhood person, I have her holding a sign, and on the sign I did "I love you, Miami," which is obviously, for us, probably know, Levon Hernandez's famous sign when they won the World Series, his famous quote. So I always thought that people would be like, it's a double thing. Oh, I know that lady from across the neighborhood. I just passed her, and "I love you, Miami." And I don't think anybody ever noticed it. And that was just something that I probably loved and paid attention to. But I guess that's one.
Your Kush Brickell location pays some serious homage to a place with great history, which is Tobacco Road.
Sure.
The #1 liquor license in Miami. And I remember when it was shutting down, it was like kind of painful. And I always thought they were going to knock down that whole building, but they didn't. They only knocked down that restaurant.
Yeah.
When you decided you were going to do that, like, I guess you felt that way about that restaurant. You knew it was important. So, like, walk me through like that curation, because that's a true museum for
Sure.
a fallen restaurant.
So, I mean, as you know, I love history. I had the oldest Jewish deli, obviously the oldest bar, and anything that I can talk about in history in Miami I'm very passionate about. That one came organically. The owner of Tobacco Road, Patrick, when they closed, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to redo Tobacco Road." And so we worked on that project together for probably 6 years, trying to find how to put Tobacco Road in the parking lot of where it is, or where it was, and where we are now. And we kept hitting bumps in the road of obstacles that we couldn't really overcome, and it was just taking a long time. And in that process, River Oyster Bar was moving to a new location. And after working for 6 years in designing and construction and architectural of everything I wanted to do, he said, "You want to just go in there and open up next month?" And I said, okay. So we just were planning on doing a pop-up there for a year. We didn't know how long we were going to be there for. And it was just a tribute to Tobacco Road. It was just a museum to Tobacco Road, and that was it. Dive bar with our food, Tobacco Road. After we realized we were going to be there for more years, I turned that into a Kush. I realized people in Brickell don't know what Tobacco Road is. They're all 26 and under, 27 and under. They weren't here when Tobacco Road was here. Everybody that loves Tobacco Road, moved to the suburbs or moved far away. I realized Kush had a better name in that immediate neighborhood. And so we still keep Tobacco Road. I have the original sign there. I have a lot of the cool memorabilia and fun facts if you take a tour. But now we converted it into a Kush with just little tidbits of Tobacco Road everywhere.
Do you follow that pattern with other places? Like if you hear of a place that's closing or something that's kind of like getting pushed out, do you try to like collect things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I am known to be a midnight marauder of signage and things. I have a good buddy who I met today, actually, about an art piece that we're doing named G Wiz. and me and him kind of go in the middle of the night when we know a place is going out of business, and we know that the stuff is going to be thrown away. We go and get that signage, or we get that piece of history and we keep it. And actually, I've been fortunate enough that I had so much stuff that I did give some of that stuff away to Derek G in Hialeah, who had a little museum there, and I was able to give him a lot of the cool stuff that I couldn't use anymore, and I still have a bunch more in my house. But yeah, I have a lot of stuff of Miami history for sure.
You probably could get into some form of education, whether it be how to run a business, culinary, Miami history. Have you ever thought about maybe teaching?
Yeah. Well, I do teach at
Oh, you
FIU.
do?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I teach as my 4th year teaching at FIU hospitality, restaurant developments. This fall will be teach again, and typically I get all my friends to be guest speakers. So like this year, I'm gonna have Jose Mendin, Michael Beltran, Jeff from Apocalypse. I have Susie from Asuka, Otto from Pincho. I have a laundry list of amazing entrepreneurs and people that are impactful in this town who come to my class and talk.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So tell us about Kush Hospitality today and what we can expect going forward. What are you most excited about? You had mentioned Kush Wynwood.
Yeah.
Tell me what gets you most excited, and then I want to ask some follow-up questions regarding
Sure.
the Wynwood location.
Well, you know, like my goals a few years ago were try to open as many cool and creative places as you could possibly do it. And creatively it was amazing. I had a seafood, I had a Jewish deli, I had a burger place, I had a bar, I had French place, I had all these different things. Over time, I got burnt so many times by landlords that I realized I can't do this anymore for somebody else. I'm only going to be operating restaurants where I own the building.
Oh.
And once I made that shift of a decision, basically every decision I made from that point was to get me to where I'm going to own my own buildings, and I'll have less and more longevity in that process. So where I am today is I slowly started getting rid of all my concepts to get me to the point where I was able to buy our Wynwood property. And now I'm going to be there. Not only, you know, these Easter eggs that we're talking about, these details aren't going to be on a short-term lease where 15 years like we are here just goes in a blink. No, they'll be there for 50 plus years. And so where we are today is I'm a restaurant real estate person. So I'm in a rare position where I own and I operate, but I also own the buildings. And so because of that, we find ourselves in a unique scenario where I know how to talk to operators. I know how to do what most landlords don't know how to do. And it's fun. I feel like I'm in a different place right now. You know, I have a couple properties and I've helped a lot of people go along the way. So my first property I bought, I built out the restaurant, I built out everything. And what I did was I interviewed who I thought was going to be the next generation of chefs or restaurateurs in this town who didn't necessarily have the money or knew how to do it. And I would find them and hold their hand during that process. So the first one I did that was to be determined, and they just got their Michelin bib last week or 2 weeks ago. And that was my first property that I kind of held their hand in doing that. And I've now done that 2 or 3 times, and I'm going to do it in Wynwood. In Wynwood, I'm bringing in a place called Broth and Bitters. It's a first-time, long-time bartender. It's going to be our first concept, and she's going to kind of do it with me, and she's going to open up her. I'm going to give that entrepreneur opportunity that she would have never had, or maybe not never had, but wouldn't have had as easily.
Very difficult.
And I'm super excited that she's going to be doing a small 10 to 12 seat omakase bar style experience that doesn't really exist within Kush. And so now I'm in this restaurants real estate development scenario where I'm trying to buy properties, focusing on affordable housing and aspects, focus on entrepreneurship, and then opening a Kush or my concept in them.
That's amazing. So I take it you're going to end up teaching at some point real estate at FIU also.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not that I'm learning as well on my way. You know, I only know what I'm doing because I've made a lot of mistakes, and I have to give credit to the city of Miami, specifically the Omni CRA and the Public Benefit Trust Fund that saw what I was doing in restoring an old historic building. You know, the Wynwood building was set to be demolished. So if you look around, every other building looks brand new and is high rise and luxury, and that's awesome and good for them. But I'm a historian, so I went the opposite. I spent a lot more money and a lot more time to keep the history of that building, that Flatiron that looks so beautiful, that has so much rich history. And they saw the benefit of that, adding affordable housing, adding these opportunities for entrepreneurship. So we're doing something a little differently. I bring in these entrepreneurs not to pay rents. I bring them for opportunities. I want to make this much money and be part of other people's journeys and stories, and look at myself in the mirror and be happy about that. I don't need to make this much money just to get the highest rents. And that's the difference between being a operator, landlord, real estate guy than just being a landlord. And not to talk bad about landlords, they can do whatever they want, but that's where I'm at.
I mean, just preserving, and I'm happy to hear you mention people who've helped you throughout the city and certain parts of municipalities, because I feel like Miami does a bad job of preserving its history, and we've just poorly done that. So to hear you preserving an old building and then creating affordable housing, so get me into that part. I mean, that's obviously passion, number one, trying to give back and help, right? Because I talk to developers all the time. There's no money in affordable housing.
There's no money in it. There's if you have over 73 units, there's money to be made. But for the smaller ones, there's not money to be made. And so there's no reason to do it. So fortunately, like I said, the Public Benefit Trust Fund, Omni CRA, Damian Pardo, they've all saw the benefit of not only restoring the building, but offering affordable housing. For me, I was passionate about affordable housing for hospitality workers. And so for 50 years, we're going to be doing affordable housing in that property. So I'm really excited to be part of that. And I'm hoping and I'm working on other projects in the future already to do more of those.
Amazing. I'm just going to give you one last thing, little rapid fire questions. Sure. Just fire them off. There'll be no follow-up. All right. Your favorite Miami restaurant that isn't yours?
Well, I love TBD and I love Jamon Teca. Those are my two favorite restaurants. Jamon Teca, what they do with their jamon serrano, they have the best manzanillas that you can't find anywhere else. I love that place. Raul's an amazing entrepreneur. I've said it many times. And then my boys at TBD, those guys are killing it. The menu changes every other week. The food's delicious. The two chefs are in the kitchen every day. You got to love that.
Okay. Most underrated Miami neighborhood?
Ooh. Oh, that's a tough one. Coral Gables is not underrated, but Coral Gables, if you took the city of Coral Gables and moved it to North Florida or a different state, it would be its own city with the level of quality restaurants, quality businesses, kind of the tree lines, the landscape, the architecture. So not that it's underrated, but I love Coral Gables. I also live in Coral Gables, so it's a little bit
we probably take it for granted a little bit.
Yeah, I don't take it for granted because, like I said, because I didn't grow up here, I love seeing peacocks running around in the neighborhood. I love seeing iguanas and lizards. Just to me, it's still interesting after being here almost 30 years. I still love it. I don't know if it's the most underrated, but like I said, I think it's the only city that would be a city in its own somewhere else.
One Miami place that should never disappear.
A restaurant or?
Any place.
Key Biscayne. I think we take for granted that we have a key right there that you can go running and exercise. You can go fishing. Obviously, you can go boating. There's a couple restaurants there, but it's just it's a beautiful place and it's literally right there. And if you don't go or take advantage of it, you should. So I think Key Biscayne in general, yeah.
Best burger in Miami that's not Kush.
Oof. Yeah, I'm not going to answer that because I'm biased to the highest level. Yeah, I'm biased.
All right, no problem.
I know what I do. I know the amount of time, energy, effort we do into everyone, and I'm sure other people do as well. But because of that, I can't eat other burgers.
Okay, totally understandable.
Ask my wife. She might have lots of opinions on that, but I don't.
Totally understandable. Okay, one word that best describes Coconut Grove.
Changing. Whether that's good or bad, it's evolving constantly, and it's always been an evolving town. Which, when I first came here in 2011, and I was on the Coconut Grove bid, and I was part of these conversations. All the old timers would tell me they didn't like all the changes that were happening. They didn't like this was happening. They wanted to keep the essence of Coconut Grove, and I remember I would get bitter. Like, don't you guys see that we're doing it better? We're doing it in so many ways. Well, now that I've been here 15 years, I'm turning into that old person that says, I don't want these things to change. I like how they were. And, I'm smart enough to realize that just because I like how it was doesn't mean that it was better or worse. That's just the way that I remembered it. So Coconut Grove is always evolving.
Yeah. So what is the most underrated thing about Miami?
The most underrated thing about Miami is that we live in another country within the United States. So if you're ever growing up somewhere and be like, oh, I want to live in Costa Rica or Puerto Rico or Panama or Cuba or wherever, anywhere that you want to live. I want to go to Spain. You can go to Miami,
be there,
live in another country, but still have kind of the laws or some of the laws, I should say, or some of the things that are great about our country. And I love that because I always saw myself living in another country. I always wanted to live in Spain or Puerto Rico's not another country, but I'm Puerto Rican. So, to me, it's almost like another country. And I love that you can be in Miami. You don't have to speak English. You don't have to speak the language of the main country. It works at its own level. And that's in every way.
It's like a passport to the world.
Yeah, and everybody says it, but when you really, La Sawacera, and you live in you spend time in Hialeah and all these places, you really see the difference between what Miami is and somewhere else. And again, I grew up somewhere else, so I love the essence of Miami.
All right, I'm going to finish off with this one question. In 50 years from now, what do you hope people say was your contribution to Miami?
Yeah,
or what do you want your contribution to Miami to be known as 50 years from now?
Here's the beauty. Because I made that transition into real estate, because I made this deal with the Omni CRA, in 50 years, I'm going to have a building that's going to have affordable housing and it's going to have Kush in there. So you're not going to have to ask that question. It's going to be sitting right in front of you when you walk past that building. So I'm fortunate enough that I was put in that place where I could be in that position. And I expect in 50 years that Kush will be there standing.
Kush Development Group.
Yeah. No, like I said, I'm not greedy. I just, if there's an opportunity to do something cool and fun and I can help people and I can make a little bit of money, that's awesome. But that's all I really want in this world. I've had it. I've lost it. I've been in the middle. I've been here. I want to do great things and things that are impactful that make me and my kids, proud of me.
Matt, from a Miami lover, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done.
I appreciate it.
And continue doing the good work, man.
See you in Wynwood, guys.
One of the good guys. Thanks for passing by my block.